Okay, we are at our last session for today, and this one is called From the Coach's Perspective. We have two gentlemen here with a wealth of knowledge and many years in the coaching ranks. So I would let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their legacy in coaching.
I defer to the young. All right. My name is LACEY Reynolds. I have been in this coaching business since 1975. And I started out as the youngest head basketball coach in the state of Mississippi at the age of 23. I coached in Mississippi, I coached in Tennessee, I coached in Texas, Louisiana, Dallas, back to Texas. Had a chance to go to Kentucky State, I turned it down and came to Texas. So a long story short, I got into coaching because the only two people I saw growing up that were successful was a teacher and a preacher. And I didn't want to be a preacher. So most of my friends were teachers or coaches. So I ended up being a coach. And I've been at Texas Southern since my first stop at Texas Southern was in 83, from 83 to 1995. And we were fortunate enough and during that time to win 5 championships and 3 NCAA appearances. Not like my counterpart, he's been back to back to back. Bad boy. Now, and I left here and I went to Grambling and I came back and I coached women. And like Dr. Fisher said, I stayed with the female basketball program for 3 years or 4 years. And I got out and I went back to start my doctorate program in 2004 and finished my coursework in 2007. And I became a doctor. Now I'm a full professor in the department chair here at Texas Southern University.
My name is Johnny Jones. I'm the head men's basketball coach here at Texas Southern University and about to start my 6th season. And my start was a little bit different than coaches coming up. I come from a small town, DeRidder, Louisiana, one high school. Was fortunate enough to become a good enough basketball player. I was recruited really high and wound up going to play at LSU for 4 years. And my mission of going off to LSU was possibly go there, be there for a couple of years, play, get off to the NBA, make some money, retire or finish playing, and run off to the sunset. But it didn't happen that way. I was stayed at LSU for 4 years. At the end of my 4th season, doing my exit interview with the head coach there, a guy by the name of Dale Brown, who coached at LSU for 25 seasons. He asked me, "Say you're not far away from graduating." He said, "No, you want to play professionally, but if you do this for me, stay with me for a year. I want you to get your degree, and then I'll help you get on at least get tryouts with a professional team if that's your desire." So stayed around, worked with him that one season. Wind up graduating. They had a guy on our staff at the time, was a guy by the name of Tex Winters. Tex Winters was a tremendous coach. He's the guy who put in the triangle with the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. Wind up going on and win numerous championships with him along with Phil Jackson. He was an assistant at LSU my senior year, and then the year I worked as a student assistant, working on a degree. The Chicago Bulls happened to call him up. As soon as I graduated, coach called me back in and asked if I would be interested, instead of going playing professional, to stay on his staff as a assistant coach. And I certainly jumped at the opportunity because I was always familiar with a bird in the hand and two in the bush, however they put it, and taking advantage of that situation. But prior to that, what led to that is as a freshman, just the recruiting period of it, I would always take the recruits out and do all the things that they needed me to do. And it was just kind of an easy transition for me and for coach because he knew that I was really involved really with the team, really for all the right reasons. and trying to help to grow the program. So I was fortunate that became his assistant there. Stayed with him for 13 seasons there at LSU as an assistant. He retired in '97. Interviewed for the job. They didn't get it. I left, went to University of Memphis, associate head coach, was there for 2 seasons. The third year, the coach got fired 6 days prior to the season starting, and I was introduced as the interim head coach for the full season there at University of Memphis. And after that season, they hired Calipari, went to University of Alabama for a year with Mark Godfrey. Then I went on to University of North Texas as the head coach for 11 seasons prior to getting back to LSU as the head coach for 5 seasons there. Then I spent a year at the University of Nevada, and now I'm about to start my 6th season here. So been really blessed and really enjoy coaching. And my wife tells me all the time, if somebody woke me up and told me that coaching was work, I'd fall out, because I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life, because I've always done something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm excited to be here. And that's the little quick synopsis.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. You've both been in the game, all pun intended, for a while. What do you think are the core values and principles that coaches should have? I mean, you're mentoring young men, young women. What do you think should be your driving force, or is yours? We talk from a personal standpoint.
Okay, I personally think that my core values would be, one, is that the coach must be a teacher. If a coach is not a teacher, then the coach will not be in this business long. The second thing that's most important is that you must you gotta have a philosophy about the game. So you gotta have, and philosophy is nothing but a love of wisdom. And in order to be a coach, you got to love something about it, because your whole life is predicated on 18 to 24-year-old young men making decisions for you and your family. And so if they make the wrong choice, then you make the wrong choice, because everything they do is predicated on what happens in your life. So I've always been told that you train up a child in the way that he or she should go, and they should never go astray. But coaching is one thing I think that the coach got to be certain about, is that in this new millennium, new age child, you got to be the father, you got to be the mother, you got to be the big brother, and you have to be all things to all people. And then even when it comes down to the administration, you have to be strong and firm, because sometimes these people try to get in and try to run your program for you. So you cannot let other folks run your program, even though they're gonna make the decision in the end about which way you go. But people hire coaches to be successful. And as long as you're successful, you won't have a problem. As long as you don't have a problem, you don't have a problem. And I guess y'all will catch that on the way home, all right? Because those problems could be the social media. It could be a kid making a wrong turn at the red light. It could be a young man going out on a date, making a bad choice. So all decisions about your program are not your decisions. They're other folks' decisions. So you have to teach your child and train the child, but you got that child at 18. And I don't know if you have a chance in that short window of time to do everything that you need to do to make that child successful.
Yep. And Doc, I think biggest deal for me with kids, one, starting is communication. Being able to communicate with the kids that we, one, bring into the program in terms of getting the right information, asking them the right questions, to get the right information back from them, to make them talk. Not that I've got all the answers, but not talking to them and never getting them to talk or to speak, so to speak, so I know what's in their heart. So I have to be asking probing questions in a sense to make them talk, not yes and no type questions, and asking them the whys and the wins and how can we, and those things that get them to talk. That have been a part of what we're doing in terms of just being able to communicate certainly at a high level, and then trust with the people that you bring it into the program. You can't just bring anybody into our program, so we have to certainly do our due diligence on the front end with the kids that we're bringing into our program, and that means that we've got to seek and search people that they've been around and find out what's going on with them prior to putting them in a situation to bringing them here on our campus, and the integrity of it. Bringing those guys in and what that means and what that stands for. So the communication piece is extremely important for us. And I think at the end of the day, if we're communicating at a certain level, you get to know them, you get to build them up and give them what we like to call a voice in it as well. Because I think, again, ownership in the program means a lot. And through that communication, we feel like we've got to build that trust and put them in a situation where they feel like they've got ownership kind of into our program and survive.
So in talking about communication and being able to open those lines of communication, how does that transfer into the mental health piece? That's a hot topic for everybody right now, especially with student athletes coming out of COVID. A lot of them were put in very different situations where, they had to do everything online. For a lot of our student athletes, coming to school and participating in sports is their comfort zone, and they were taken out of that. So we see a lot of a big uptick in mental health conversations and mental health issues. How does that play into it when you're dealing with your students?
We're really fortunate here at Texas Southern that our administration put the right people in place that gave our kids access, not just our coaches and people being around them, but we had professionals and professional help that our kids could see and have an opportunity to touch it, and that didn't have to necessarily come through us, but because of the communication line that we have with our kids, they were not afraid to speak with us in terms of their mental situations or their thought process of things that's going on with them. And I think when you open up lines of communication, give those kids an avenue and they feel the freedom to be able to express, and that's having a good staff or whatever you're around you, that kids don't fear going to someone and that you're going to look at them differently about how you handle them. I'm fortunate enough that I have two younger kids of my own that was going through the pandemic and being away and being housed and shut off from your friends and everything. So you knew coming back into this environment that it was going to be different. And so the communication piece has been a little bit different in trying to work through it and getting them engaged with certain things. It's been different, but it's been a plus for us because we've had professional help. We didn't try to act as though that we knew everything. At the same time, because we were somewhat in the same mental, but not necessarily the same mental capacity, but in the same situation that those kids were in, and what you were dealing with, and then learning how to deal with these kids that was going through that transition of trying to get back to being isolated to back being with your friends and doing things.
Well, I would look at it from a teaching perspective. Say, for instance, I had a student in this very classroom say, Dr. Reynolds, I have not been in contact with a teacher face-to-face in 4 years. And I just, after talking with the student, I said, well, take me back over those 4 years. She said, when I was in the 9th grade, COVID came. In the 10th grade, we was online. And in the 11th grade, we didn't go back to school. And in 12th grade, we just stayed online. So now I'm in college. And you're the first teacher I've had in face-to-face conversation in 4 years, so it's a little different. So certainly when Coach Jones can attest, because I know that I was teaching his son, and he didn't ever tell me, but I just know that he was listening to my conversation when I was teaching my class. So because we were doing asynchronous. So a lot of times when you're teaching young folks now, we see that camera back there. There's a camera right there. So we're getting ready for the new world trend. See that camera right there? So we can teach in this class online, asynchronous, and everything now. So a lot of these young students, they come to college, they are shy, they are introverts, They like to speak out, but you still got to love on them.
Absolutely.
And you can't push them away because they've been pushed out. And a lot of students come to college looking for high hopes and promises. And in this world of mental health, the first little thing you say, because they've been told a lot, and you've talked to kids, they told me that I would never be successful. They told me that I would never amount to anything. Well, I come to class on the first day, and I tell students, I was told by the administration that this is the smartest class that ever came to Texas Southern University. And I say, I'm so excited to have all the A students in my class. So I know that this semester, 1, I will not have any problems. 2, I'm gonna have the best students on campus. 3, I'm gonna have an exciting semester because everybody's gonna come to class and you're gonna do your work. Now, with Dr. Reynolds, if you miss 5 days, I don't care if you're the president's child, you're going down. You're not gonna pass the class because freshmen, I want you to know it's mandatory and compulsory education. So you lay the ground rules for them, and then you gotta have fun.
Yeah.
And you gotta make certain that you push the right buttons on these young kids this day and time. And just like coaching, basketball players like to be pushed. If they play for a coach, they want the coach to push them to perfection. They want them to push them to another level. And the coach gotta come in with a game plan. Coach gotta come in prepared. So I did a presentation at Texas Association for Health and Physical Education. Dr. Fisher and I, we talked about the classroom teacher as a classroom coach. So when we come to class, we got to teach. When Coach Jones go to practice, he has to teach. And you have to make certain that your students are reciprocal of your teaching practices. So you got to bring best practices in basketball, and those same best practices must be on in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And that's your mental moment.
So do you view yourself as a mentor? Do you present yourself that way?
Oh yeah, I think that if I'm like Coach Jones, I've been doing this so long, and I get so excited when I come to class. Right now I think Dr. Fisher probably, I've had this whole class for 125. That's when I rock best. All right, I got right now. I think Dr. Fisher, they put a limit on me. I used to have 125. They put it to 70 and brought me another teacher in. I said, Doc, I got to train that damn woman. You know what I'm saying? I said, I was enjoying this. I said, I could get out a lot of work, but I don't mind grading papers and I don't mind doing everything. My wife tells me I'm nosy because I ask kids a lot of questions. So when you're a teacher, you got to ask questions. And I taught high school for a minute, and the principal told me one time, he said, Coach Reynolds, I've never had a teacher that has such an impact on students in 1 year as you have. I said, well, you never had me. I said, because the first day I went to the high school down in Dallas, I'm gonna tell y'all, they told me, old man, you won't last 2 weeks. I put my little pill bottle down and I said, I just want y'all to understand, I got some bills to pay, but I just want y'all to know my bottle is empty. I didn't bring my medication today. So just in case I just have a moment, I won't be responsible. And they say he's crazy. But I never had a problem. When I left Dallas to come to Houston, almost 60% of that class came to Texas Southern as new students.
Oh, wow.
So
You're
as
a recruiter too.
I'm a recruiter. I can sell a net of sledgehammer. But the thing is, the reason I like teaching and coaching is because, like Dr. Fisher said earlier, and most of the presenters have said, you know, they all, Coach Jones, even in his moments of winning and all the places he has worked at over the years, it's always been an attitude of gratitude and a relationship. I've had, in my years here at TSU, I've had a lot of great moments. And we had opportunity to give me maybe 30 years of my 30-year moment. And all of the basketball players came back. And the young men and young ladies came back, and they all wanted to take pictures, and they all wanted to celebrate. Because this is what you do as a coach. You touch lives. You make a difference. And you can't, that's priceless.
Yes.
It's the things that you do as a coach, because it started a long time ago. Coach Jones just said he had aspiration playing at the earlier level, but he came back thinking that he didn't have a passion. He didn't know he was going to go into coaching. It's something that happened along the way. And we don't know what roads we're going to take. But I took Robert Frost. I took 2 roads to Virgin and Yellow Woods. And I've been here ever since. I've been in the woods. And I like it here. I might have been like Rudyard Kipling. I might have been like, if you can keep your head when all about you is losing nerve and blame it on you. Or if you can trust yourself, you got to have a trust factor. So those are the things that we as coaches, we do. We make a difference in folks' lives. We impact people forever. And Coach Jones, he came to TSU. I'm his biggest fan. I come out there and I sit and watch him practice. I said, man, that's a bad dude right there, man. Because he came right in and he blended in. So a good coach, John Wooden said it best. A good coach is a good organizer and a good theorizer. A great coach is a good theorizer, a good organizer, and a practical man. And that's the thing that people fail to realize about coaching. It's the simplicity of what you do. You don't have to be complicated. Can you ride a bicycle? Yeah. If you can ride a bicycle today, you rode a bicycle 20 years ago, you can ride. Now I'm not going to get on a moped. I'm not going to get on that little two-wheeler that be scooting down the road. That's a little too fast for me. But for some people, that's what it floats your boat. But the thing you have to understand is, one thing I've learned from you sitting here today, Dr. Fisher and I, for 10 straight years, we went to every conference we possibly could. Now that we got our doctorate, we got slack, doc. We got to get back on the groove. Yeah, we got to get back on it. We got to go back. I'm going back to presenting. I'm going back after the day. I'm going to go to these other conferences and start talking. I got a story to tell. So, I just want to.
And you think with props.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't need that. See, I told you that PowerPoint and I'm going to glorify over here. Yeah, I don't need that. I just want y'all to read that. Them nuggets, there, baby.
Come, Coach Jones.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see if I can bring you back into this.
Oh, no.
conversation.
No, Doc is great. That's why I love having him around and being around him, because he's certainly a wealth of knowledge. But I was very fortunate. I'm proud of myself, the caring coach. I was fortunate to come from a 2-parent home, but I'm proud of a caring coach is. Still today, I've got a coach that's in his mid-80s, or late 80s now, and Dale Brown, still keep in touch with. He coached me in college. My high school basketball coach, I meet with him every August, and the first week in August with other players to visit with him, just because of the impact he made a lot. My junior high school coach, the same thing. And because of what those guys meant to me, so my involvement with young men now is to try to make sure that I can impact their lives in a certain way. And a while back, in worrying about coaches and thinking about the impact that you make on young men's lives, and getting ready for a speech, he was looking up the definition of a coach. And back in the 1500s, the definition of a coach was a horse-drawn carriage that was designed to carry people of importance from where they were to where they needed to be. And when you think of that definition of people of importance in a coach, that's what I look at the most now, being a coach, and that definition being people of importance of the young men that I'm blessed and fortunate enough to have in my care, and to trying to get them from where they are presently, trying to get them to where they need to be, or ought to be, or want to be going at the end of the day. And so when you apply it like that, it's not always just about basketball. It's bigger, because when you transition them and helping them transition through certain things, just not basketball. You're talking about life. And so when, I've been fortunate enough over the years to have people in my life always think of them as my own kids, because when I sit in the home, always talk about the only thing we want to be as a transit. We want to be an extension at the end of the day of your home. Can't be your dad, and this is what I'm telling the parents, but we want to be that parent away from home to help your kids continue to grow in a lot of areas outside of just basketball. And so when we get kids, we talk about helping them grow in several areas, and talk about academically and athletically, and spiritually and socially. And we feel like if we can hit all those points with the young men that we have, and it's not just on the basketball court, and talking about cutting down nets, ordering rings, hanging banners, and doing those things, but giving them an opportunity to be successful in life, especially if we can implement the things that we feel that are important to them. So we don't just look at it as basketball. We feel like it's championships off the floor, them walking across the stage with degree in hand and having an opportunity to make a huge impact. And we take as much pride in our guys graduating and doing things the right way as we do in sitting back and watching them play games and win championships. I get more joy when I see them walk across that stage and shaking the president's hand and coming out on that other side, because that means that they've made it and they've got an opportunity now to go and make an impact in whatever community and society, wherever that they wind up living. So those things that are really, really important to me at the end of the day. So when I take that definition of a coach in the importance and taking people of importance somewhere, the young people that we have an opportunity to impact is what we like to do on a daily basis.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you're just talking about building character in your young men. Has there been an opportunity through your recruiting process when you saw somebody that maybe didn't have the character that you were really looking for as this is my model student athlete, but you took a chance on them anyway, and then had to kind of work through that process to get them where you needed them to be or where you thought they could be?
All right. Well, some of the big things that I try to guard against, because when you're talking about building organization and when you're talking about coaching, I call everybody a coach. We've got an athletic director, got his doctorate, he's the VP and all that kind of stuff, and they got all them letters. And as soon as I see him, and it may be a bad thing, I just holler coach, because I think those people impact lives. I think people who own businesses, bankers, that they're coaches, because the leadership, I always look at things as coaching, because you're helping people get to certain places.
Sure.
So at the same time, when I'm trying to build an organization or just like our team, I'm extremely careful of what I bring into it, right? And so sometimes you can't transform people if there's a situation or whatever. I do try to do as much as I possibly can in terms of background stuff to see is it a possibility that I can help this person, or what their mindset is and what their desires are, because they may be different from ours. And I'm not about just winning basketball games. Learned a long time ago, and I was at North Texas, and when I got my own head coaching job, I didn't want to bring anybody into the program, and I had 2 young kids when I finally got my head coaching job. But I said that if emergency occurred and I had to run by the dorm or apartments or whatever, and I needed a player to come sit with my kids while me and my wife went to take care of an emergency, if I had to drive up there and I had to go filter through my guys to get to them, had the wrong guys on my team, I should be able to ride up and get any one of those players, because I'm exposing them to the other guys that are on the team.
Right.
And if it's anybody in there I don't trust around my family, I didn't think that they needed to be a part of what I consider the family.
That's right.
At the end of the day. So I've had kids that had a little bit of an edge about them. I've had kids, as long as I've been coaching, to tell kids before that you need to go play for this guy or whatever. And I'm fortunate that they were speaking of me, and guys have come here that they've done that too, that have helped us win championships, because I'm not sitting there browbeating or knocking kids out or whatever, but I try to reach them a certain way and reach them where they are. And if I can do some background stuff and find out he had some bad habits, but he's not a bad person, and with the right type of guidance and on the right street around the right people, I think you can help this person get to where they're trying to go. And we've been able to do that. And the answer to your question is yes, but we do extensive background stuff to make sure these things can happen. And that I want to have a strong enough staff, want to have a strong enough team that we're able to pull guys up and they're not going to pull our team down. And there's this thing that called locker room lawyers, because you can have these guys that come in and they can disrupt everything that you're doing, because when they get from around the coaches, they get in the locker room and they say certain things and then guys gravitate to them and you can mess up the locker room. Well, when people tell me, well, this guy may not be good for your locker room because he's a locker room lawyer, I quickly maybe to tell them today, my locker room full of judges. You know, so the lawyer gonna be in the wrong place if he's trying to convert these dudes, because they own the team. And when you know you've got buy-in from guys because they believe, they trust, they do all the right things. When guys come into our locker room, we feel like our guys build them up instead of allowing people to tear them down. And we feel like that's been one of the reasons we've been able to be successful. Because when you can get people divided or whatever, it hurts you. But we've certainly taken some chances on some guys. And I'll tell you this, it hadn't always worked out. But when those things have happened, as a leader, I've quickly made the right decisions. I feel like we needed to. I've removed people from my team. Now I'm quick if I think it's disruptive for the team to give up on the player. But I've learned over the years I never give up on the person. So I still sit there and try to help them, scholarship, navigate them to try to help them. But I remove them because, you know, you've been on the team and you playing, and that's a privilege. But if you ain't doing those other things, you don't get an opportunity to enjoy that privilege.
Well, my piece on that is that I was an assistant coach for like 18 years. And as an assistant coach, I worked for a gentleman in Memphis, and his name was Coach Jerry Johnson. Coach Johnson used to always tell me, he said, now, young coach, if you bring me a freshman, I'm gonna fire you. I say, what? If you bring me a freshman, I'm gonna fire you. I need you to bring me somebody that I can deal with. I need grown people. I say, okay, I can do that. So he told me. So for a long time, I never recruited a freshman, and we were successful. So I think my whole 6 years at Lamar, I never recruited Coach Johnson, a freshman, because I was afraid that he was going to fire me. I didn't want to challenge him that he was going to fire me. So, and then the other thing, as an assistant coach, I never recruited a player that I liked. I always recruited a player that could fit Coach Johnson or whomever I was working for as an assistant coach. If I worked for Coach Jones, I would bring in a player that could fit Coach Jones' philosophy. Because Coach Jones was gonna make those decisions. My job was to go out there and find him the best talent that I could. When I worked for Coach Morgan, I had to recruit a player for Coach Morgan. He talked about the athletics director, Coach Granger, Dr. Granger. Dr. Granger was one of my players. I went to his house when he was 18 years old. Dr. Granger tell everybody, said, when Coach Jones came to my house, he came to my house at 12 o'clock one day. He didn't leave until about 8 o'clock that night. And I didn't leave until he said I do. Yeah, so I told him about marriage report, but his daddy came back and told me, he said, Coach Nullins, I just want you to know that everything you said in my house, you did. And I think that as a coach, you know, I've always prided myself in this. If I come into your house and talk to your child, I would say this, ma'am, sir, my job is to try to find who I needed to talk to in that house, on that table, the mom or the dad. I need to find out who was gonna make the decision. That's my first choice. If the mama was the strongest, I'm gonna talk to the mama. If the daddy was the strongest, I'm gonna talk to the dad. So if I thought you was gonna make the decision, I'm gonna talk to you. Because the little kid ain't gonna make the decision in the right house. But under no circumstances, I would tell a parent, I say, I promise you, that if I take your child to Texas Southern, we'll send your child back home a college-educated young man, a college-educated young lady. Dr. Fisher, she worked in Coach Moreland's office, and when I was in my first years down here as an assistant, especially when we came in this building, and I saw her grow into becoming not only a volleyball player, she just blossomed, and so there's a link. So the thing that you have to understand, I look at Patricia back there. She has twins. She say they're not identical, but in my estimation, hell, they look just alike. So you bring your sister tomorrow, y'all tell me if they twins or not twins. Fraternal, what's the word? Other word? They identical to me. All right, because I can't tell them apart. But the thing is, I think you have to make certain that last semester I had a young man to get his doctorate degree. I have another young man getting ready to get his doctorate degree. I have police officers that came through TSU and that are doing great things. We've had a lot of success here at Texas Southern with our basketball players. Coach Jones told me one day, he said, Coach, I heard a kid say, I love Dr. Reynolds. He said, Coach Reynolds saved my life. I said, man, who you talking about? He said, Coach, man, this kid was he was interviewing, he was actually crying. He said, man, Coach Reynolds saved my life. Well, he was a big kid, 6'8", by 270. We played Duke in the Sun Dome in Florida, and we had these two big pillars. Reggie Whitaker, local boy, Herb Baker, local kid, and he's talking about Herb Baker. And Herb Baker told me, he put on Twitter the other day, Coach ought to run for president. But that's the kind of love that you get from your players. I said, no, Herb, I don't think I need to be president, man. That's out of my league. That's out of my league. But the thing that you take under consideration, Doc, is that you got to find a happy medium. Now, in coaching, I think that my rule is this. Rule number one, Coach Reynolds is always right. Rule number two, even when Coach Reynolds is wrong, refer to rule number one. So you can't go wrong with it. And then all you young people that aspire to be coaches, I never make rules. I let students make rules. The team make the rules. And when they break the rules, I say, who made the rules? The team made the rules. So what the rules say? Let's go back to the rules. Okay, the bus late. When the bus starts, the bus never stops. So if you late coming down the road and I see you coming, you got to stay home because you didn't make it there on time. If you go to the airport and they close that gate, you missed that plane. We got to train folks to be working. In the college, y'all probably never paid attention to this. In college, there's no training ground. So if you don't get an internship, you leave here, you go right into the world of work. So if you fail to meet the requirements to become a good worker, then that's on you. My daddy always said, if you're on time, you're already late. All right? So you have to be early. And I think that the reason that I've never had a problem being a coach is because I got to coach myself up. When Dr. Fisher and I was in school, I didn't have a problem. We had the largest graduation class with PhDs and EDDs they ever had at Texas Southern. Because I was coaching. Let's go, baby. We had the fourth quarter. We got to finish this thing. So we had 28, 30 people. And you're talking about, we got to share. And I think some people get envious sometimes. As a coach, you can't get envious. Coach Jones, he's been coaching a long time, but he don't have any copyrights on any plays. I go to the game, I go to practice, I know he plays better than players. Shit, I be sitting down there, I know which way they're going, I know the route. So I say, I just see the play, coming. He got a little fella named PJ. They ought to call it, just put it in, baby. PJ can put it in. PJ is the MVP for 3 years in the SWAC. He owned the SWAC. Coach is the 3-time MVP. No, he's the coach of the year 3 times.
No.
Get the tournament champ. But
I want players of the year, not coach of the year awards. I'd much rather have players of the year. And then they would hit on something that Coach said that I think is really important is even when you've got good teams and building a product or a program or whatever, you can't be afraid to coach your best player and to make sure that you get their attention as well, because it's important. And I think it's important to understand that great players really want to be coached in any industry because I think they like being challenged at the end of the day. And I think when you're coaching your best player and you're holding them accountable and doing what you're supposed to, that those other guys have a tendency of falling in line. I don't have a whole bunch of rules like a coach said, but we make sure that rules are in place. And now when something happened in those rules or the lines been stepped across, we don't address them all the same way with players. One guy, we got a situation where, okay, you were late for such and we're going to make you run. Well, that joke in shape, he don't care about being late. He can run all day. So it's not really punishment. But if he's a starter, if him not starting because that's something that's really important to him, or is it bigger that, okay, now you're going to miss a game? Those are kind of things that wind up getting people's attention. I had a kid, I was very fortunate years that one at LSU had the number one player possibly going to get drafted in the NBA. And one of the things was his brand was really important to him. And then making sure that there was nothing that's going to restrict or anything negative that was going to come out that was going to affect that brand and what they were putting out there. So Wade's going to certainly good enough to play all the minutes and all the other stuff, but how do you hold those people accountable as well? And the one thing you didn't want to do was cross the line and affect the brand at the end of the day so they could really put themselves in a situation so you don't discipline them the same way that it might have happened for the other guys or whatever. And then it's making sure that guys are receptive enough to not put you in a situation to where you can't coach the rest of the guys because they're somewhat of a superstars. And now you got to make sure that this guy's doing what he's supposed to because those other guys are watching. So if this joker's missing something, those other guys trying to see how you're going to handle certain situations. But don't be afraid to coach your best player on and off the floor. And at the end of the day, they'll come back. I was driving in this morning and just got a call from a former player who probably played for me 15 years ago. I just wanted to see what you were doing. And it's one of those guys that just have to get into and discipline. You ain't never think they were calling, but they was calling to say thank you for what you did, how you did it, and you held me accountable and pushing me a certain way. That joke, I had it laughing because it was senior night. And I went and grabbed his mom in the tunnel and told her, I said, look, they're going to call your son now. He coming out there with some roses for you, and you got to come out there with me. I said, when you see me out there in front of people, we got a big hug, and I'm going to kiss you on your cheek. We're both going to smile and take a picture, and you go back in that tunnel now. I don't want no stuff out of it because Mom, we used to have it and go after it. You get after it because she was obviously protective of her baby at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, he's a kid who wind up calling it in. So excited, you obviously hearing from him. And you eventually know you're really doing the right thing when you're holding folks accountable and you're getting after and coaching them. And now it's going on to do things and it become an invite me to a soon to be wedding at the end of the day. So they don't all just dislike you at the end of the day when they get out.
I have this one thing, you probably read it already, but every player that plays basketball, football, all these sports, every player would not become professional athletes. But every student athlete has a chance of becoming a professional person. And that's the thing that I'll put my hat on, that every child that comes to your program, every child that comes to a university can leave there a college-educated young man, a college-educated young lady, just like that young man right there saying. I tell my students all the time, if you put it in writing, y'all will miss it because you never read it. And they got to learn how to read, and they got to learn how to articulate. And then you can't go through life with thin skin. The only people you get to pick in life are maybe your family. But you might not like your boss, you might not like a lot of people, but you got to learn how to, get along. And I think sometimes these new millennials, Gen X, all these different alphabets, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and everybody is into these numbers. We didn't have all that. They got ADD, ADHD, LBG, they got Q's and everything. They got all kinds of alphabets. All right, man, I just think that we all can get along, and then we gotta understand that we're all human and we're all people. Everybody got feelings, and everybody got a button somewhere that can be pushed. And as a coach, you got to make certain that you know which button to push. As a teacher, you got to make certain which button needs to be pushed. And as coaches, I'm gonna be honest with you. Every child that's been successful in this arena, they've been pushed by somebody that look like us.
I like that, and if you can just add to that, if it's okay with you. My biggest deal is that, and I use it, the analogy all the time in terms of these kids, because I usually have about 15 kids, all of them are different. And to push the right buttons, you've got to know each one of them, and not just the starting 5. You got to know the 15, because those guys on the bench are just as important. And always use a car manual at the end of the day of how important it is, because if you buy a brand new car, you know that you've invested in it, and you know that you want to find out exactly what's going to make this car run the best. When the oil change, how many miles, get the tires, and you read that manual, you're going to know everything about it. And so that's really when I started coaching, the mentality that I had is that car manual is going in and making sure I knew everything about that person that we're bringing in. So I've had to talk to people around them so you can push the right buttons to make sure that you're going to get everything that you can out of them, and they're going to get everything out of what they need to be doing as well. So that was my 2 cent, Doc, on top of your all the letters you threw out. I couldn't keep up. I got behind a little bit.
So this is a dynamic duo.
You knew who to close with. You knew who to close with.
So you both talked about providing mentorship, helping your student athletes develop and grow. How do you strike that balance and know when it's time to kind of fall back a little bit, to let them fall if they have to grow and develop on their own? You don't want to coddle them too much. But how do you strike that balance?
Well, I think sometimes,
And then, Coach, you did say, sorry to cut you off, but each player is different.
Everyone.
So trying to figure out, because what works with me may
Right.
not work with him.
yeah,
Right.
So that's
I
a
may
lot.
be
That's
able
a
to
big
come
part of
and
your job.
scream at you after you make a mistake, and that's what you need to adjust, because you're going to take it to a certain level.
Mhm.
I may be coming whisper to him, because if I holler at him, he may shut down and be done for the next 5 or 6 plays
Right.
or whatever. So if you don't know who you're dealing with, because some people, it's an embarrassment
yeah.
to them because they don't know. Other guys, is just that they knew everything, but they needed a little bit of a fire lit under them. And you've got to know who that person is and who they're not, and really addressing it. That time, and all of them are different. All 15 of those guys are different, and I may be mad at you about something, but I might have to scream at him to get my point across to you, in a
I've seen
sense,
that
because he
happen.
can take it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and sitting there, man, I ain't even do it, but yeah. So, but that's how
But I
you
heard
have a chance to reach him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have situations where you have some guys are not starters, but they want to start. You have some guys that are role players, but they don't accept the role. Then you have some guys are players that can excite the other guy, because the other guy believes in that guy more than they believe in themselves. So like Coach said, you have to talk to that guy in order to get to that guy. But a lot of times I think as an assistant coach, I always take the role of an assistant coach. As an assistant coach, my role was to be a filter. I can't be the head coach. So, don't nobody like the head coach. Everybody likes the assistant coach. That's where I look at it. Well, they like it, but on the game night, because they think they're gonna play. So they trying to play up to him. But in all doing practice, they don't like it because he's running them, they're working too hard. And then the coach make rules, coach make decisions. So my job was to be I got to pick them up. I got to build them up. I got to go to the dormitory and I'm leaving, I'm going home. Oh man, you can't go home. Coach chews you out. But in life, you're gonna get chewed out. So I got to go down there and they say, I already called your mom. She don't want you to come back. All right? Ain't no sense you trying to go back home. Your little sister already got your bed. So why you going home? Your girlfriend, she already gone. She done moved away. She get married next month. So ain't no sense in you going back. So the thing that you have to take under consideration is that as an assistant coach, they wear a lot of hats. They don't get all to get the credit. Now, where a lot of assistant coaches mess up at when they move into that 16 inches, when they move over to this next seat, they hadn't prepared themselves because they hadn't watched him. See, head coaches are very, very smart, and they make good choices and good decisions. And I think that a good assistant coach needs to pay attention to the person that's in that first chair, and they watch their calmness. See, head coaches don't get it. Coach John, I've never seen him get upset. Now I give him credit. He worked the hell out those officials. But at the end of the game, he's gonna go back over there because I evaluate those officials. All right, and all the officials, Johnny gonna be on you. I say, yeah, man, he might take your shoe off and throw it. But at the end of the game, he's gonna be all right. I say, so you're gonna have to I call it a weak official that can't take a chewing out from a coach. See, if you can't go over there and say, hey, coach, I made a mistake. I blew that one. All right. So you got to go back and then you got to come back. We was playing at Oklahoma one night, and Billy Tubbs went over to the official. He said, look, is this my gym or is this Texas Southern gym? I just want to know how Texas Southern shooting 15 free throws and we shooting 2. I mean, are y'all Big 8 officials or y'all swag officials? Are y'all Big 12 officials or where y'all come from? In the second half, we didn't get close to the free throw line. Then I was down in Mexico, down in New Mexico, University of Mexico, and Dave Bliss, he had told the official told me, he said, hey, little coach, I'm down there grabbing, just hollering and screaming. He said, coach, settle down. He said, look, this year, how many times you gonna play New Mexico State this year? I said, we're gonna play them one time. He said, I got 8 games with New Mexico State. He said, so, hey, everything that's close, they gonna get it. You get where I'm coming from. So he said, just settle down. Every now and then I'm gonna throw you a bone. I said, okay, coach. And and I went back and I started being nice to him. I ain't arguing no more. I said, man, that was a hell of a call. You made a great call. I told the kid. I said, tell that official here. He said, tell that official that was the best call he made all night. He gave me 2 more. So every night you have to use reverse psychology. And I think that as a coach, you have to, it's a psychological thing. And we do a lot of things. And the biggest thing that coaches do to enhance their players is that we have to be able to make decisions standing up. We have to make decisions just like the game. We got a coach practice a 5-second play every day. The last minutes of the game, perfect practice make perfect play. If you hadn't practiced it, then you don't need to run it. A weak coach, if you call a timeout, just pay attention when y'all go to the next game. If a coach calls a timeout and the players are not paying attention to the coach, when they go back on the floor, they're going to screw the play up. They're not going to do it. But if the coach got their attention and everybody focused and they're in there, and the coach got their attention, the game on the line, coach know who he wants to make that shot. And he gonna tell them that we're gonna run the picket fence, or we're gonna run a pick and roll, or we're gonna do whatever he want certain players to do it. So I think that's how the decisions about the game comes about. And that comes from practice. Whatever happened in practice become paramount on the day of the game.
And I just will say this, your question was that I've been very fortunate that over the years in making sure that we put our system in, put our plays in. But when game day, I like to put the game in the hands of our players because it's their game at the end of the day. So I make sure that they have buy-in and understand, and we're in agreement in whatever our game plan is going forward. But it is true that you have to allow some guys to fail to give them a chance to grow, because a lot of times they think, okay, we're doing all this stuff at practice, but game night, I'm gonna venture away, and I'm gonna do this because I know what I'm capable of doing. And somebody in the stands and told them, be it one of the family members, friends, or whoever, and they try to venture away. And sometimes when those things happen and they fail, and then they get exposed because of things that you were trying to guard against for them to protect them, it takes that sometime to reel them in, to get them to understand that, possibly could have cost us at the end of the day. And I'm not a coach to sit there and call timeout. Sometimes our guys got to figure it out. Late, somebody make a run. Do I need to jump up and call a quick timeout, or can these guys settle it down? And especially early in the season, to understand what adjustment we've got to make to put ourselves in a position to be successful, to get a stop, to slow it down. Who do we go to? Do we execute something offensively here? Because if you just kind of let it go and it build, it can get away from you.
Right.
But if early on in the season, you got guys with the mentality that, okay, this is happening, this is what we're supposed to do. They've gone through that, and that's a growth period at the end of the day for them. So it helps them in on the floor and off the floor as well, with time management. We have coaches go by and get guys up and tell them, okay, the meeting's in 15 minutes or whatever, and you do that, and you tell them to set the clock. We're going to meet at 3:30 today, and we're on the road or whatever. They're used to maybe a manager, somebody coming around knocking on doors. Periodically, you don't go knock, and somebody have to wind up coming in late, and then you address it. You start talking about, well, when you get a job and you're working and you wind up not showing up and you're not there and you're waiting on somebody else to take care of you, these kind of things happen. So it becomes life lessons or whatever form at the end of the day. So through basketball, that's what we try to teach. So we do allow them to fail or to have some setbacks at the end of the day, because that's what it's part of as well.
Teachable moments.
Absolutely. So it's not the end of the day. It would tell them sometimes setbacks are set up for the obviously to come back and to bounce back, but they've got to go through it, because I always tell them, if you don't have any issues or you feel like you've never been defeated, your competition hadn't been very good that you've competed against. So you're going to have setbacks. It's whether you have an opportunity to grow from it. And I remember one of my pastors used to tell me, call me sometime after games and talking to him, and he say, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. He say, but as long as you're learning, you never lose at the end of the day. So that's how our kids are. We tell them sometimes we're going to win and sometimes you're going to learn. But as long as you're learning, you're not going to lose. But when you put yourself in a position where you stop learning, that's when you start losing. Because if you don't learn from your mistakes, now you're losing.
Absolutely, and you're prone to continue to repeat those mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you this one last question. What do you think about NIL and its impact on
That was my
HBCUs?
question.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Sorry.
That's your question?
That was my question.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Gotcha. Yes, I appreciate that.
Coach,
Great question.
thank you.
Great question.
Engagement, crowd engagement.
Yeah. So I think NIL, I think it was some fashion of it was certainly long overdue. At the end of the day, my only problem with it is I think it needs to be regulated in some type of way, because it's certainly an imbalance when you talk about across all schools. And it's always been somewhat of an imbalance if you want to talk about they talk about the Power Fives or mid majors, whatever, because of resources that are out there. But when you put them in a situation to NIL now, initially when I thought it was set up, it was the school couldn't have anything to do with it. It was because of a kid's network or ability through social network or whatever, and whatever their followers, that's how they were able to go get it. And you talked about gymnasts and golfers and those people who was generating most of it initially. And then it got to a place to where the schools had to get involved. And schools started hiring people on campus to create the NILs and to coach the kids through it, and to be the people that go out there and seek now what they call collectibles. And that's generating people out there who are willing to put in the collection of whatever, be it companies or individuals or whatever. And so it's so far out of balance now when you have Power 5 schools, and you can use the example because it's public, from Texas A&M being reported by University of Alabama of what's going on, and A&M firing back at Alabama. When you've got powerhouses like that fussing over things being out of balance, it means something, because they have the resources or whatever to deal to offset a lot of the other schools. But so it becomes very, very difficult. I just wish it was more regulated, and it was an opportunity that it was networked in a way that other people all could enjoy. So it's not going to all be on certainly the same level. And I think it eventually will. At the end of the day, I'm glad that kids are, because you still got some kids that are staying in school now because they have a chance. And then you look at the women's basketball player at LSU or whatever, some people are not putting themselves in a position to go professional because they're making more now than they would if they go professional. And it certainly gives the school a different brand and an uptick and all those kind of things. And these girls are being resourceful in probably making contacts that's going to help them throughout the rest of their life, instead of going professional and playing for a couple of years and not really knowing what's going on. So this type of stuff is just helping them in not just the basketball side of it, but if you're networking it the right way, I think some great things can at the end of the day happen for you. But it's restricting and hurting more kids than I think it's helping, because kids are making decisions for the wrong reasons to go to school. It's not because it's the best academic situation for them. The best plan time is how much I'm going to get. And I think you become more restricted in that area. And I think it really, really it is hurting more. Now kids are transferred for the wrong reasons, or kids are not wanting to play because this kid NIL is bigger than theirs. And it's at the end of the day, that's the type of money that's being thrown out there, and it's difficult. So I'm for it. I just wish it was more regulated, because I think it's a separator in terms of other schools continuing to climb and get closer at the end of the day.
Puts more separation into the haves and the have-nots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna mess you up now.
Come on with it.
All right, now, see, you gotta go back and think about the $100 million slave. And you gotta think about my frame. See, I really think that they've taken us from the cotton field to the playing field. That was one analogy some time ago. Well, I think with these NIL, it's definitely it's not an even playing field, because SWAC cannot afford to give SWAC and MEAC cannot afford to give out any NIL money as to that extent of some of these Power 5 schools. And then when you look at the scope of who plays basketball, still in most conferences, I did my dissertation on the impact of selected demographics, psychological and cognitive variables on the academic performance of African-American student athletes. Among all the NCAA Division I student athletes, the African-American male was graduating at the bottom of the totem pole. The African-American female was graduating at 47, well, the African-American male was graduating at 42 to 47%. 37, 42, African-American female was graduating at 47 to 52, the Caucasian male was graduating at 52 to 57. Then the white female was graduating at 57 to 62%. Then I said all that to say this: the student athletes that was attending the SWAC had a 3-point GPA, but when they put those student athletes in the SWAC and the MEAC into the mix, their GPAs went down because now you only got those 20 to 25 student schools in the SWAC and the MEAC. You put those in with the other 325 schools. Now you've got a different dichotomy. You got skewed numbers. So it doesn't look like the real picture is being presented. But a lot of the research out there was saying, a lot of research on African-American student athletes wasn't written by African-American. They were written by people that didn't look like us. And then the only thing that made the difference is that a lot of the, in my research, you said one author said that African-American student athletes are playing basketball to become rich and famous. And then some of them use the basketball court as a springboard to become rich and famous. Well, we know a lot of athletes don't play baseball anymore. Most athletes play basketball. Black students, they play basketball and football. But we know that soccer, Messi, making that money. We know that baseball, making that money. You know, so I don't understand why these young kids don't play baseball no more. Then it's a difference. So you got to look at back in the day, the big trucks would bag up to the edge of the Black community and get all of the best athletes that we had. And then they would come back at the end of the semester, and some of those kids, 25% would flunk out, another 25% would be broken, another 25% would be maimed. All right, and then you got this inferiority complex that's centered around SWAC, MEAC, and HBCUs, is that if I go to HBCU, I can't go to pro. But that myth has been displayed in a bad way, because if you can play at this day and time, I don't care where you play, they can find you. All right, so you just got to go. I was telling coach kids, son, if you gonna come here, you got to be the best in the SWAC. You got to be the MVP. You gotta have to be you're gonna have to go against those Power 5 schools, and you're gonna have to play at another level. So if you're gonna be 6'10" or 6'11", you're gonna have to play. Well, Victor showed that. Victor Wembanyama, he's 7'3", 7'5". He played with friends, never went to college. But it doesn't matter. They found him. Jokic, they found him. Dokic, what he bought out in Dallas, that's Dokic now. They got all these different names. But they found him. But my thing is, the young men that we have, Kyrie, got a problem. You know, because we think that I don't know. That's a mental thing. That's another mental thing. But they're making more money than they can ever spend in their lifetime. Jay Morant, making more money than they can play in his life. But is he a bad person? Because they made a mistake on Jay. Jay, he got to learn about his culture. You know, he in Memphis. Y'all have been in Memphis? No, everybody in Memphis shoot. All his friends are shooters. Just because guys flash the gun don't mean that he's a bad person. But the media portrayed it as a bad person. Was it a play gun, a real gun, or not? Now, did the gun get him in trouble? Or was it the people that he was associated with? The people that made the decision on him, like the young man said, it's about persuasion. One time, there was a situation where people that played certain positions in certain sports, they had to be athletic. Then some had to be intelligent. It all depends on, listen to the commentators. But the long story to your question is that I think that athletes this day and time have an opportunity of a lifetime. They can make more money. They can the NILs, they can do more with less, and they can get exposure. But you got to be a good person, and you got to have an attitude of gratitude. And somehow young people, they just been spoiled. Let's face it, AAUs they tear down the moral fabric of what a coach is trying to do. Because now you don't go to the high school coach. You got to go to the AAU coach. AAU coach got more control over the high school kids than the high school coach. So then, the parents, the kids, if you look at most students come out of high school, they've been to 4 schools. They just be jumping. They can't stay nowhere a long time. So when they get here now, we think about the NIL. That's why I look at the NIL. I think NIL, is the NIL good or is the NIL bad? In my opinion, I think NIL, it sounds like a good idea. But I think until they get it, put some more into it and give us the NCAA or somebody, it's a $12 billion industry. They got to get our students more money and they got to give us more latitude. If they can, the only way some students can qualify for the Pell Grant, the parents got to be dirt poor. Because you got to get $4,000, $5,000, but your parents can't work. Now, I don't know, Coach, you can explain this. If all of the guys on the college team not get a Pell, or just the ones that qualify for the Pell?
One's qualified.
All right. So the other kids that don't qualify, the parents got to come out. And I think that that's wrong. So I think that the NCAA ought to give every student athlete on an average $2,000 or $3,000. If you're gonna give everybody, if somebody can, this young lady, if you can go out there and get $1 million, that's one thing. But I think that they can give everybody $3,000 or $5,000, $10,000 a semester. I think that'll help everybody. But Coach got a son. If he had to send his son home when he was playing college ball, you can't even buy a kid a ticket to go home to a funeral. That's an NCAA violation. You can't buy. I got a kid that is home. I got wrote up one time by the university because I carried a kid out to eat.
Well, the good thing is a lot of that has changed.
Yeah.
And through the certain funds that they have now, you can send a kid home. They don't care if you feed them, you can give them what they want, because now the game has changed because the NIL.
Yeah.
They don't care about you taking somebody to eat now and you're doing your deal, and they'll take care of your family, get you some clothes, all that stuff. Those things have changed, but that NIL's a game changer.
Yeah, it is, but it's not, NCAA don't matter. They don't mind. It's other people within the universities that take it and turn it the wrong way.
Yes, you're Dr. Fisher.
Yeah. That's where the problem starts. When the different levels of administration, they turn it and they're pinning against you. And that hurts.
Different institutions handle that different ways.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, I took your question.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is a question for both of you guys. When you guys talk about the NIL, and from your perception, Dr. Reynolds, I get that you feel like it's going to ruin the college game to a sense. And Coach Jones, what you've seen that being implemented now, do you guys think that it will kind of ruin the guys' taste for basketball? Like they will start to love the game even less because of NIL?
I think it's already become a problem or an issue, and it's not that their passion or love for it, is the desires or whatever. We've got probably one kid on our team that probably does extremely well with NIL in his background, things that he's done, but that's not going to be resourceful for other guys that's coming in the program that didn't help. And I was listening to someone earlier talking about running backs and those guys making money. And there's a certain gauge out there that this is what the point guards are getting now. This is what a Power 5 guy is getting as a power forward if he's in the top 25. So there's a kind of a gauge that's been set out there, that kind of an unwritten rule of what these guys are getting now. And I think it affects other people that are around them more so than it affects that guy, so to speak, to the one who's getting it really affect, because you've got some folks out there who feel like that I'm doing what I'm capable of doing, but I'm not benefiting like this person is. So there's some jealousy and all those things that really sit in that I think now starts to affect the college game. And then you've got agents who can be involved or whatever now. And when those things happen, what's the pullback? It's extremely tough. I saw some guys this year not even getting on the floor. And they're responsibly healthy, but they were getting the NIL stuff taken care of, but it was to protect themselves in a sense from being injured at the end of the day. But so it's kind of getting their cake and eating it too, but the place where they weren't benefiting from their talents. They was capable of, and they could possibly be in school only for a year, and this was kind of their transition. So it's the problem is already there, and I'm not sure how long it'll be prior to them being able to get their arms around it and what that answer is, and they don't know right now, and I think it's going to take quite some time before they can get it. What I would like to use the term regulated in the terms of that it's going to be healthy for the college game at the end of the day again, because it's really professional. Now it's really what it turned into. Your minor league system where guys are getting paid.
To piggyback off of what you said, so do you think, I feel like that's going to be a recruiting issue, right? So say I recruit a top level, player to come play, and then he has the opportunity to make all this money in the NIL, but his whole goal is to go professional. Right, now I can make this kind of money, I can sit on the bench, and now this school who's invested all this time and energy into recruiting me, I could kind of like ride the wave like Ben Simmons been doing in the NBA. But
Hold it, wait, hold on. That's my kid. Hold on.
I'm saying that to say, like, I feel like that could become a potential problem. Because why would I want to run the risk of injuring myself in college that could put me out when I got this money that could carry me until my opportunity to go pro, right? Especially if I know that I may be a one and done. I'm coming in 1 year and I'm out,
But especially if you can come in, you establish yourself, you've been deemed as one of these guys that could possibly be a #1 draft pick. You come in, you've gotten your NIL, you get off to a great start the first 12 to 15 games, especially in basketball.
right?
You got 30 plus games you possibly play, you get off to a tremendous start, and your stock has gotten to a certain point. Why do you keep playing? To risk be it injury or team not doing well and those things, and the fingers pointed at you after you got off to a great start and your non-conference deal. Now you got an opportunity to shut it down. And all the scouts have had a chance to see you doing what you're doing. Now you're a hot commodity. Why do you risk it? Unfortunately for Ben Simmons, and I don't know if you know this, I coached Ben. I was his coach,
No, I didn't.
college coach for the 1 year.
It's clear.
Yeah. So, but he was in a certain situation that it was like him, and they had a kid at Duke, and had a kid at Kentucky or whatever that was projected who was going to be the #1 player taken. So it was an ongoing thing that he had to be at a certain level, night in and night out. And some people tried to talk him into shutting it down like midway prior to us getting into conference play because he'd had a super non-conference season. And so they were worried about injuries and all those kind of things going on. Unfortunately, he was became the #1 player taken in the draft, but it was tough. And this was before NIL. Can you imagine if NIL was at that time and the possibilities, and you just don't know which way those things would have turned because he had injuries like everybody else. Or you sitting there risking, I put myself in that position. Unfortunately, it wasn't like that. He was a guy that didn't mind getting back on the floor and playing and going through things he went through to become the #1 player taken in the draft. And that was something. Yes.
I have a quick question. I know you guys talking about NIL, but I want to know, how has the transfer portal impacted like HBCUs? Because in my world, I'm athletic advisor, so I see the other side of it, the kids getting recruited. But I want to know how, from a college perspective, has it like impacted, the HBCU and like what division you're on?
Well, for me, we've certainly benefited from it more so than it's hurt us. We wind up losing one kid, we've gained kids, because what happens is, my philosophy, I go out and try to recruit top guys that I'll get out of here today and be at a gym tonight, because it's evaluation period for us, right? So I'm going to try to see some of the best kids at Power 5 schools recruiting, because I know at the end of the day, all of them not going to be happy when they go off, and they'll go for the wrong reasons or whatever. They get the NIL and they get all that stuff. So what is your end goal and what you're trying to do? Well, I want to play professionally. Well, sometimes you got to make an investment in yourself, bet on yourself, whatever at the end of the day. So if they've if they go get that NIL, which they're capable of doing, now you got that. You sit there and you watch 32 minutes of the game, you got to play 8. You put yourself in a position, do you really want to play professionally? You need some stats need to be seen. And so it benefits and it helps us at the end of the day. So we win on that side. So some of those kids will be in school 3 or 4 years or 3 years, whatever, realize they've made a mistake and they come and end their deal here because this is their last opportunity to be able to do it. So I've been very fortunate that we've been able to gain high-end type kids. We've got 3 guys on our team right now that we feel that are extremely capable of going and making some money, definitely after playing, that we just brought in terms of transfer portal. At the end of the day, we wind up losing 1. And so it's benefited us. And I think across the board, HBCUs are going to lose some guys, but I think it'll eventually balance itself out. I use one guy as an example. Had a kid at Jackson State, was a tremendous center, was a like defensive player of the year like 2 or 3 years in a row, and did an excellent job and played. And unfortunately for him, when NIL hit, some Power 5s was messing with him. He wound up leaving and going on to another school, and at Ole Miss, but I didn't play as much or as well, and stock really just plummeted. At the end of the day, had he stayed where he was, I think he had an opportunity because of the stats and leading the league in blocks and rebounding and all the stuff that he was doing, impact he was making. That was a mistake for him. And I think that that's going to get out, that kids going to have an opportunity to see, I can go and I can become more of a practice player instead of a superstar in those other places, but they paying me really to come in and practice, because you're not getting that dollar that those superstars are getting that are going to be out there playing in front of you. And I think at the end of the day, it winds up hurting those kids more so than helping them. But it's hard to say no to it when those people come, because sometimes when those kids recruited and they're in your program 2 or 3 years, your desire was to go play Power 5. Now that opportunity's come, now there's some money attached to it. But at the end of the day, it's going to cost you in the long run because professionally you don't have the numbers and you didn't get the chance to play at that level, so you have a chance to come back. So I think it hurts more than it helps at the end of the day. But for us, we've been very blessed and fortunate.
Anything else? I think that's it.
Oh, no.
That one?
I just want to make a comment. Thank you both for today's session. We were talking about earlier, Coach, that, no matter who you come across, you always say, hey, Coach. And I think that a lot of times as coaches, people may tend to put us in boxes and say, well, you're a really good coach, you should continue to coach. And so it's really nice to see, you're still in your prime and you're coaching, but you've done what you've done and you're okay with transitioning and being a great leader or a great teacher or a great husband or whatever. And I think that, the same skills that we are coaching our athletes on, we have to also become that as coaches as well. And so I know that for me, when I transitioned from coaching to being a leader to a public speaker to coaching other coaches on how to create, effective environments for their athletes to be able to prosper and do, what they're supposed to do. I think it's important that coaches get to see growth as well, because if we're not growing as coaches, then, how do you build a team? And I tell people all the time, if you can build a team or you can build a program, you can build a business, you can build your family, you can build friendships, relationships. Yeah. And so I just, I do appreciate both of you because it's good for coaches to see that, you don't have to always just be in a box. You can, you can have your resume and you can have your championships, but it's okay for transition. It's okay to, venture on to other things and be great at that as well. because the impact that you make in your athlete's life is always gonna be there. So thank you both.
What's the thing that, thank you for that question. I just think this, and I say it's short, I think that a lot of times people fail to realize that, you know, coaches are leaders. Coaches are people, they're human beings as well. And when you're at the end of your road, you know, life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna get. And oftentimes it's just like this bottle of water. When you get down to the last little corner, that's when it gets good. All right. So I think that sometimes a lot of people see me sometimes, I wear a necktie a lot of times. I dress down, I dress up. But they say, where you going today, coach or doc? You going to a funeral? I said, no, I'm going to work. I say, so what do a coach look like when they're not on the coach? They have to look like a professional. They have to be a consummate professional. And I think that that's important, that you look like a professional. You're part of the academy. And you got to know that your culture. So if I teach school, but coaching is my profession. So I tell them don't get it twisted. All right. So I'm a classroom teacher, but I've been a coach all my life. And just because I stopped coaching, I've never stopped coaching. And I hope you're gonna understand where I'm coming from.
That's parenting is coaching. In doing all those things. I was fortunate, glad you brought up the little piece, Scott, about dressing. I've been very fortunate just coming up and hopefully the right way and doing things the right way, because you just never know. Because in the position that I sit now, and I've always been this way, anytime I leave out my door of the house, I'm representing a whole lot of stuff. Not just my family when I leave out that door, but I'm representing this institution, the kids that are on our team, the families and all that. And I got to make sure that I'm in the right place and just not going out there any kind of way. It means something to me. So when those kids look and see it, just try to tell them, you try to dress like what you want to be, and you just never know. And I told them a short story that I was pushing a buggy one time, and my wife, she'd get on me. We always go, just relax, push something. I'm in the grocery store, push the buggy, turn the corner, as the University of North Texas, president of the university and his wife, pushing their buggy going the other way. And if I ain't presentable and just looking any kind of way, it reflects upon them. And so that's why I always try to make sure that you put your best foot forward and doing everything you can because of the mass of folks that you represent. And I don't want someone else to lose an opportunity or a chance because of what I've done. I want to make sure that everything that I do gives someone else that's trying to come up a chance, and it's not a negative reflected because of something that I've done. So,
Absolutely. Well, I was told, I'm sorry.
I thought, yeah, you had a question, go.
no, yeah, he was doing like this, like.
Well, I was told that when I was going through the agenda and who was, and what the way we were doing this, that this was great to put you all at the end to end the day. I think this was a great way to end the day. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for sharing your knowledge and with us today. This has been great.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and appreciate you really being here. And I'm open, so if there's anything that I can do to help enhance your career, anything that I do, please feel free. My office is actually right down this hall here, and I'm in the men's basketball office. His name's Johnny Jones. So if there's any questions that you may have or anything that I can possibly do, I'm here for you, and just as a resource. I'd help in any way that I can help to get you moving forward. Okay.
Yeah, and my name is LACEY Reynolds. They call me Doc, some call me Coach. I'm the interim department chair around the hall, around the corner for health kinesiology and sports studies. And I'll do anything I can to help anybody and everybody know that. And if you have any questions, I tell people I give you nuggets. I don't make decisions, I just give you nuggets for life. And everything about life is LIFE. And life and love is synonymous to one another. You can change constants. You can change the LI and the LIVE. You know, you can LOVE, and then you can do LIE, IF, FILE. So life is. Life is, you know, there's a lie based on if, on one main file, and that's being the good man above. And if you, that's part of the Bible, BIBLE, basic instruction before leaving earth. If you do good, then good will always come back to you. And I just want you to know that I've been a teacher for a long time, and I've done good and I've done well. During COVID, a lot of people say, well, you know, I don't want to be no teacher because teachers don't make no money. I never worked to make money. I worked to make a difference. And I never been about the amount of money I made. I worked for the sheer hedonistic pleasure of enjoying what I do. And that's why I come to work. I come to work so I can impact lives. I come to work so I can be a difference maker in the life of a person that come to me looking for guidance and direction. And I think that I've done well along the way.
So come back tomorrow, because we'll have part 2 of this gentleman tomorrow. Thank you all so much.
I hope y'all enjoyed my PowerPoint. I was bringing some real nuggets up there. You know what I'm saying?